Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud, Daf 10 of Masechta Ksubis. Friends, yeah. Yo, the Maise, so my mom sent me this thing the other day. Well, I mean, it's not happy or anything. Apparently, I don't know, somebody died in the family. My grandfather's brother's wife. That's like my first cousin once removed's mom. Anyways, the point is she was buried in Wellwood. Huh. Well, there you go. Wellwood. Anyways, so we talked today about Pesach Pasuach. Okay, exciting stuff. And what else? Is the Ksuba the Oraisa or the Rabbanon? Oh, friends, what do you think? And then we talk about the value of a Ksuba in a Mishnah towards the end. So, and then like some Agadata stuff. So let's jump in. We have some work to do on Daf Testament Beis. So we're about halfway through Testament Beis. Let us do it, friends. Wait, did I put it on airplane mode? 1 second. I did. Okay. Says the Gemara, Testament Beis, halfway through the page, Amr of Yehuda Amr Shmuel. Ha'omer Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. So if a fellow says that he found a Pesach Pasuach, right? You have a newly married couple, and the groom, right, so they get married on a Wednesday. The next day, the groom comes to court and he says, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, my wife was not a Besula. And he doesn't have any proof or anything like that, but that's his claim. So, so says, reviewed in the name of Shmuel, that he's believed to the extent that she loses her ksuba. So we had seen yesterday that, right, Rabbi Elazar had said that he's believed to the extent le'osra olav, right? So he can no longer be with her, but she still gets her ksuba, right? Because he doesn't bring proof. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel is saying that a step further than that actually, based on his claim of Pesach Pasuach, Matzasi, so actually she loses her ksuba. If I understand correctly, it means she loses her entire ksuba, because he's basically saying it's a mekach tos. It was a mistake, right? He thought that he was marrying a besula. She's not a besula, so therefore she shouldn't be able to get any amount of her ksuba. That's how I understand it. Amr Yosef, Michael Mashmalon Tonino. To which Rav Yosef says, whoop-de-doo. That's what he says. He says it's a Mishnah. If a fellow eats by his father-in-law in Yehuda, right, in the area of Eretz Yisrael that's called Judah, so if he eats by his father-in-law there, shelo be'edim, and there are no witnesses there, so he can no longer make a tanis besulim, right? Meaning, so if you have an engaged couple in the area of Eretz Yisrael that's called Yehuda, and let's go back to for a second, that the minig in Yehuda was that after Erisin, before Nisuin, the Chas and Kala would have Yichud, i.e. they would be alone together without anybody else around. And therefore, once already it's a known thing that they're going to be together, well then, right, with nobody else around, so then we have to suspect that, well, if it turns out that she's not a Besula, maybe that's why. And therefore, in Yehuda, where they have this practice to have Yichud before Nisuin, so, if the next day he shows up in court and says, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, you say, okay, so what? I mean, we assume that it's because you guys had Bia when you were alone. So, now says the Gemara, Yehuda udelo matzitoin, habegalo matzitoin. So in Yehuda, he can't make this claim, right? Right? He can't make a tanis besulim in Yehuda. But anywhere else, he can. Ulamai. And what is the, and to what extent would he be making this claim? So I said Pesach Pasuach Matzasi a second ago, but actually the Gemara is gonna ask exactly what the claim is. But what is the implication of the claims? Either also olav, if it's to say that, so he comes to Bez and he makes a claim that his wife isn't a Besula. So we're saying that this claim could only work outside of Yehuda. Now, if it's just to make her usher to him, well then Yehuda Mailo, in Judah, if he comes to court and he says, look, my wife is not a Basula, and he says, look, I didn't sleep with her. Yeah, sure, we had Yichud, but we didn't have Bia. And he says she must have had a relationship with somebody else. She would be also to him, even in Yehuda. So, Ela lav lafsida Ksubas. So rather, so what does it mean that he would be believed, or that he would not be believed in Yehuda, but he would be believed elsewhere in other locales? So it can't be to make her also to him, because even in Yehuda, if he says that he thinks that she had a relationship outside of their engagement, so then he won't be able to be with her anymore. So that's anywhere. Rather, it must be to make her lose out on the ksuba. And we say that in Yehuda, he cannot make her lose out on the ksube, because we have to assume that maybe they had bia. But anywhere else, he would be believed to make her lose out on her ksuba. And we want to say, what is the claim that he's making? Pesach pasuach matzasi. We want to say that anywhere outside of Yehuda, if a fellow writes anywhere in the Galil, if a fellow comes to Bezdin and he says Pesach pasuach matzasi, he doesn't bring any evidence, but he says, look, I got married yesterday, I had beer with my wife last night, and she's not a besula. Right? He doesn't have any proof or anything, no rags that don't have blood on it or anything like that. So we want to say that if he says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, so he would be believed to make her lose out on her ksube. So we see that we have a Mishnah corroborating what Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. So why do we need Rav Yehuda to say in the name of Shmuel that if a fellow comes and says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, that he's believed to make a lose out on a ksuba? We already know this from the Mishnah, Lo de Katoin Tanis Dom, to which the Gemara says, actually, not necessarily. That Mishnah may not be talking about Pesach Pasuach. The claim that he might be making there to make a lose out on a ksuba is actually that he comes with a cloth that they cleaned themselves with after having bia, and he shows, look, there's not one drop of blood on this cloth. My wife was not a basula, i.e. he comes with evidence, and therefore, since he comes with evidence, that's why he's able to make a lose out on a ksuba, but not necessarily if he would just come without evidence and said Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. We don't necessarily have a proof for that from the Mishnah. And we have Rav Yehuda saying in the name of Shmuel that if he says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, so then he would be believed nonetheless to make her lose out on her ksuba. Itmar, it was stated, Amar of Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Mishum B'Shimon ben Elazar, Chacham tiknu loim livnos Yisrael v'sulam osayim v'lamon amona, that it's a takonas derabbanon, that the enactment of a ksube is a takona derabbanon, that a besula gets by her ksuba, if in the event of, I think so, that's the thing, right? In the event of, I think that's the thing, right? In the event of, that sounds good enough to me. In the event, I don't know, something seems wrong about that, but it might be right. If she gets divorced, in the event, if she gets divorced or widowed, so then a besula would receive 200 zuz, but amona, and a widow or a non-besula would receive 100 zuz. Pesach Pasuach Matzasi Nemon. And then continues Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel, quoting Rav Shimon ben Elazar the Tana. So he says, look, the Chachamim, Mida Oraisa, there's no concept of a ksuba. Mida Rabbanan, the rabbi said, look, there's a ksuba, right? If they get divorced or he dies, so she receives either 200 or 100 zuz. And just like they said that she gets a ksuba, they also said that in the event of Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, she does not get her ksuba. Well, if that's the case, then what's the point of the takana b'chlal? Why would they make a takana to say that in the event of, let's say, divorce, he has to pay her 200 zuz, but he can always just easily say, oh, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, and then he doesn't have to pay it. So what's the point of making a takana that he has to pay when he can literally just come without evidence, say Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, and then he won't have to pay? What's the point of a gzeira like that? That's just easily, undone. Says Rava, yeah, but we have a chazaka that a fellow is not going to, be tereach, work hard, make a wedding, and then just lose it. Now, if he says, so how come he loses it? Well, if she's osur to him, so then she's no longer allowed to be with him anymore. So then, so if by saying Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, then she becomes osur to him. So he wouldn't have gone through all of the effort to make a chasana, and then for no reason come the next day and say Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. Now they can't be together anymore. So therefore, it says Rav Nachman, the name of Shmuel, quoting Rav Shimon ben Elazar, that the rabbi said, look, if a fellow comes and says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, he's believed to make a lose out on a Ksubis, and we're not overly concerned that he's going to trick the system, because tricking the system really kind of ultimately hurts him to the extent that he just invested all this time and effort and money in making a chasana, and then he's just going to the next day make her osur to him. So we assume that wouldn't happen. Tanahol v'knas chachamimu lo sigbe elamin ziboris. We have a brayso that says that since the construct of a ksubis is a fine of the rabbis are fining the fellow. So therefore, because it's just a fine, so she can only claim the ksubis from the lowest level of fields. There are 3 types of fields. There's edis, which is the best, beinunis, which is the middle, and ziboris, which is the worst. She can only claim the ksubis from the worst field since it's a fine. Knoso, my knoso, why are we fine? What does a fine have to do with anything? Rather say that no, since it's a rabbinic thing, it's not midoraisa, it's derabanan, so therefore she can only make a claim against ziboris fields, not against edis fields. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that the ksubis, that a marriage contract, the ksubis, is midoraisa. One second. Does Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel really say that a ksubis is midoraisa? But we learn in the brayso, kesef yishkol kimora habesulis. That it says in the context of mifate, of seduction, that if a fellow seduces a besula, so then they have to get married. Now, if the father doesn't want to marry his daughter off to this man who just seduced her, so then the fellow needs to pay. Where am I? So he needs to pay kimora besulas. Let's go weiter. Sheikh zeh kimora besulas, mora besulas kozeh. So this needs to be like the mora besulas, and then that needs to be like this. Meaning, okay, what it means is that there are basically 2 cases. There's one of them is seduction, the other one is rape. Now it says by rape that the fellow needs to pay the father 50 kesef. Now it says by seduction that it says where my kesef yishkol kumar besulas. It doesn't say exactly how much, but it says kesef yishkol, which is shekels. So we compare rape and seduction, and we say, well, just like by rape it's 50, so also by seduction it's 50, and just like by seduction it's shekels, so also by rape it's shekels. So now, okay, fine. Mikan samchu chacham l'chsubas isha min Torah, and because it says mohar, which is like a settlement, which is like a contract, so therefore we rely upon that to say that a ksubis is midoraisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel omer ksubas isha eina midivei Torah lemidivei sofrim, whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says actually a ksubis is not midoraisa, it's midorabanan. That is our kasha. How could Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel have said about, less than 10 lines earlier, that ksubas isha min Torah? How could he say it's midoraisa if Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel literally just said 2 lines earlier, what we just read 2 lines ago, ksubas isha eina midivei Torah lemidivei sofrim. So does Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel say that ksubis is midoraisa or midorabanan? So ipuch. So flip around the second one, right, and say that actually Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is the one who says that it's midoraisa, not midorabanan. My chaz is the apchaz basraisa ipuch kamaisa. Now, how come you chose to flip around the second one? How come you chose to flip around? Right, meaning initially we had seen a brayso where Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that ksubis is midoraisa. Then we had a brayso where Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says it's midorabanan. So we say, okay, fine, flip around the second brayso to say that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says it's actually midoraisa. But how come that's the one you're flipping around? Maybe flip around the first one and say that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says it's midorabanan. No, don't say that, because we know for a fact that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that Ksubas Isha is midoraisa. The Tananis we learn in the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer says Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel nosin lamimaus kaput kaya, that he gives to her from the money of kaput kaya. What does that mean? The money of kaput kaya is like basically the money of the United States. The shekel versus dollar, right? It's 3.5 shekels, whatever, 3 plus shekels to $1, right? So if we say that like the flat rate of a ksuba is, let's say, 200 currencies. So if you get married in Eretz Yisrael, so then you pay 200 shekels. And then if you get married in the United States, you're going to pay $200. So if you get married in Eretz Yisrael, then you move to the United States, well, you committed to 200 shekels, so you only have to pay 200 shekels. But what if you get married in the United States, where it's $200, and then you move to Eretz Yisrael? So what do? So it says, Reb Shimon Gamliel, you have to pay $200. Because even though now you live in Eretz Yisrael, but you still have to pay $200, because Ksuba is midoraisa, and you committed midoraisa to $200. So, Viba Isema, alternatively, I could say, Kula Reb Shimon Gamliel, that entire brisa, where we had said that Reb Shimon Gamliel says that Ksuba is midorabanon, actually, it's missing a few words. It's missing some words. This is how you have to understand that. Right? From the fact that it says Kimora Besulos, from there we rely, where we assume that Ksuba is Mida Oraise, Ksuba Sa'amona in a Mida Torah Mida Sofim. However, the Ksuba of a widow is not Mida Oraisa. The Ksuba of a widow is Mida Abanon. She Rabban Gamliel Omer Ksuba Sa'amona because Reb Shimon Gamliel says that the ksuba of a widow is not midoraisa, it's midorabanan. So when Reb Shimon Gamliel says that the ksuba is midorabanan, that's talking about the ksuba of a widow. But Reb Shimon Gamliel would say that the ksuba of a besula is midoraisa. The ksuba of amana is midorabanan. Ksuba of a besula is midoraisa. Okay. How would also the comment of Nachman? So now we're just going to see a bunch of sort of incidents. How would also the comment of Nachman? There's a fellow who came before Rav Nachman. The fellow says to Rav Nachman, Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. I found the Pesach Pasuach. Amalei Rav Nachman Asvu Kufre. To which Rav Nachman said to the people there, they said, whip him, beat him up, knock him around the shtickle. Mavrichoso Chavitale. How does this young whippersnapper know that he found the Pesach Pasuach? He must be hanging out with the harlots of Mavrichoso too much. And therefore he instructed the people to take some palm fronds and with thorns and hit him, because he's been hanging out with the harlots too much. But doesn't Rav Nachman say that he's believed to say Pesach Pasuach Matzasi? So Mehemen umasvinon le kufra. Yeah, he's believed. We still beat him up anyways. Rav Achai Mishani kam bebocher kam benosui. Rav Achai says, look, it depends. If it's a bocher, so we beat him up, because why does this bocher know for a fact that he found the Pesach Pasuach? Why is he so experienced? He must be hanging out with the harlots. But if he's already married, now he's marrying another wife, so then okay, it's understandable. So then he spared the rod. How would also the comment of Rabban Gamliel? There was a fellow who came before Rabban Gamliel. Amalei Pesach Pasuach Matzasi. He says, I found the Pesach Pasuach. Amalei Shema Yitiso. And Rabban Gamliel says, how do you know that you found the Pesach Pasuach? Maybe it was closed. You just maybe it was closed, but you kind of got in through a crack or something. And I'll tell you a mashal. The fellow's walking in the middle of the night. It's very dark. Hita mitzo pasuach lohita mitzo no. And he gets to his house, and he can't see anything, he doesn't know. Now, if he gets to the door on sort of an angle, he'll be able to slip right in, and he won't even realize that it was locked. But if he gets it, if he hits the door head on, so then it will be locked. So he says, here also, how do you know that was necessarily a Pesach Pasuach? How do you know that she wasn't a Basula? Maybe she was a Basula, but somehow you managed to get in through the side door, because those who say that maybe it wouldn't be so possible like by accident so much, but this is what Rabban Gamliel said to him, B'mezid hitisa ve'akarta l'dasha. Well, maybe intentionally you sort of, went in through the side door. L'dasha ve'avra. Maybe you kind of went through the side door. Emshel chamashal l'mad v'domer. I'll give you a parable. Like a fellow who's walking in the middle of the night. If he intentionally tries to kind of sneak into the door, even though the door is closed, but if there's like a little crack in the door and he intentionally tries to get in through the crack, so then he will find that it is open. But if he wouldn't intentionally try to get through the cracks, then it would be closed. He's saying, look, I don't necessarily know that you find the Pesach Pasuach. You may have just been able to get in through sort of a side entrance. There was a fellow who came before Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rebbe. Right, that was an illustrious family, right? It was Hillel had a son Shimon, who had a son Rabbi Gamliel Azakin, who had a son Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who had a son Rabbi Gamliel, who had a son Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who had a son Rebbe, who had a son Gamliel. This is that final Gamliel. And he says to Rabbi Gamliel bar Rebbe, Rebbe, he says, look, I got married, I had bia, no dam. Amra lo, and the wife says, Rebbe, besula ayisi. I don't know what to tell you. I was a besula. Amra lo, he said to them, Avir li oso suder. No, bring me the cloth that you used to clean yourselves with. Haviu lo asuder. So they brought to him the cloth. Ushor b'mayim. He soaked it in water. V'chibso, and he laundered it. Umatzo olav kamatipe damim, and then some drops of blood were exposed. Basically, there was really dam there, but it was covered up in the fellow's sperm. So they washed a little bit the cloth, and lo and behold, there was drops of blood. Amalo lech zechev mikochecha. So Gamliel bar Rebbe says, look, I'm going to have a good life. Amalei huna bar Marbre dirav mi parzakil Ravashi onanami naiverochi. So why don't we do the same thing? No, if ever we have a case, we can just kind of wash the cloth. Amar le giut shalanu kikibu shalom. No, in order for us to have the sort of level of washing that Gamliel bar Rebbe had, we would have to also like iron it. And if you say, okay, so let's iron it. My bara le chomraso, but the stone that we use for like pressing and for ironing would kind of get rid of the dam. So basically, we don't have a way of doing this method of exposing the dam anymore. How would also the comment of Gamliel bar Rebbe? Another fellow came before Gamliel bar Rebbe, Omer le, and he said to Gamliel bar Rebbe, Rebbe ba'ativ lo matzosi dam. Hey, I got married, I had bia, there was no dam. Omra le Rebbe adayin b'sulani, and she says to Rabbi Gamliel bar Rebbe, look, I'm still a basula. Omar lohen, he said to them, Aviu li shtei shvachos, bring for me 2 Canaanite slave women. Now, we saw something similar in Masechta Yevamis, achas basula v'achas bula. So Rabbi Gamliel bar Rebbe says, find for me 2 Canaanite slave women, one who's a basula, one who is not a basula. Aviu lo, they brought 2 of these shvachos for him. And he had them sit on an open barrel of wine, and the woman who was not a basula and did not have the hymen blocking, so the fragrance of the wine was able to go right through her body and out the breath of her mouth, and you were able to smell the fragrance of the wine through her breath. Basula in recha nodef, whereas the basula that was not the case. Avzo shiva v'loy recha nodef. So also this basula sat on this wine barrel, and lo and behold, the fragrance of the wine did not pass through her body. Omelo lech schebe mikochacho. So Gamliel bar Rebbe says, well, there you have it. She's a basula. Go and enjoy your life together. Many years of happiness. V'nivdok meikara begava. No, how come you needed the shvachos? Why not just have her sit on the thing initially? Gemara havashmiele maisila avchazi. Well, because Rabbi Gamliel bar Rebbe heard that this was like a little trick you could do, but he never actually had tried it out himself. And he thought maybe he wouldn't know how to execute it properly. the milsa shop, begava the milsa shapir, maybe he wouldn't be able to implement it properly, and he didn't want to sort of degrade a Bas Yisrael to do this experiment incorrectly. So he figured he would experiment with the Shvachos. There was a fellow who came before Gamliel Azakin. Omar lo, and he said to Gamliel Azakin, Rabbi ba'ativ l'matzasi dam, I'd bia, there was no dam. Omar lo, Rabbi mishpachas dorkti ani. And she says, yeah, of course he didn't see any dam. I'm from the family of the Dorketes. She'ein lo'en lo dam nida v'lo dam besulim. That the Dorkti family, they don't have menstrual blood, and they also don't have dam besulim either. Bodak Rabbi Gamliel b'kovasel matzik dvarel. So Rabbi Gamliel did a shtickle, research, and he found out that that's correct. She comes from this family. Omar lo neichs chayim mikachacha. So Rabbi Gamliel Azakin says, okay, people, go and live a beautiful life. Ashecha shezachisa l'mishpachas dorkti, and Mr. Fellow, Ashrecha, right? Very nice that you merited to have somebody from this illustrious Dorkti family. My Dorkti, what does Dorkti mean? Dork Katua, a generation that is cut off because apparently it's more difficult to have children when you're from the Dorkti family. Amr Reb Chanina Tanchumim Shal Hevel Nichamo Reb Gamliel Oso Ish. So it says Reb Chanina that Reb Gamliel Azaken, said wow, Ashrecha, that you married a girl from this family. But says Reb Chanina, it's not really true. The Tanya Reb Chia, because Reb Chia taught that just like yeast is good for dough to make it rise, so also dam is good for a woman. V'tana mishum Reb Meir, it was taught the name for Meir, kol isha shadamei amrubin bonei amrubin, that a woman who has lots of menstrual blood will have lots of babies. So therefore, says Reb Chanina, that it's actually not a very good thing. It'll be difficult to have children if you're from this Dorkti family. Itmar B'Yirmiyah Ba'aba Omar Zechei B'Mikochacha Omar Le Rabbi Yossi Ba'oven Omar Nischai B'Mikochacha Omar Le. So it was taught that Rabbi Yirmiyah Ba'aba says, as our Girsa is, that Rabbi Gamliel Azakin says, go and have a good time with your wife, whereas Rabbi Yossi Ba'oven says that you've obligated yourself with this wife. Right? That meaning you've married a woman who's going to have difficulty conceiving. So I understand, according to Rabbi Yossi Bar Oven, who says that he basically got himself into a difficult situation by marrying a woman from the Dorkti family. It's like Rabbi Chanina, right? Who says that if there's no dam, then it'll be difficult for her to conceive. But according to Rabbi Yirmiyah Ba'aba, so then why did Rabbi Gamliel Azakin say, you've merited with this woman? Well, it's to the extent that, there's never going to be a situation of Safek Nida, because she never is a Nida. Okay. How would also the comment to Rebbe, a certain fellow came before Rebbe, Amalei, he said to Rebbe, Ba'ativ l'matzasi dam, I got married at Bia and there was no dam, Amalei. And she said to Rebbe, Adain Bisula Ayisi, I'm still a Bisula Vishne Batzoros Haban. I would happen to have been that it was a year of famine. Ra Rebbe Shepneim Shchoim, and Rebbe saw that their faces were black. Right? They seemed to they were malnourished. Tziva Aleim Bechnisum L'merchotz. So he said, hey people, why don't you go to the bathhouse, V'echilum V'ishkum, and then he gave them food, and he gave them to drink, V'echnisum L'cheder, and then he put them in a private room, Ba'al Matzadam, and then they had bia, and there in fact was blood. And then Rebbe says, people, go and have a good life. And Rebbe said about them, the pasuk in Eicha that says that their skin was like dried to their bones. It was dry like wood, right? That because they were so malnourished from famine, she was just so dried up that I guess it affected, I don't know, I guess her hymen was dried up against her body, and it just made it as if she was not a basula, even though she was. Interesting. So we add all of these, so who did we see from that family. We saw Rabbi Gamliel. We saw Rabbi Gamliel Zaken. We saw Rabbi Gamliel Bar Rebbe. I don't think we saw Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, but apparently there were like lots of these shilas came to that family in multiple generations. Besuluk Ksubasum Asayim. So as we have noted, says the Mishnah, that a Besula, her marriage document, her Ksuba is for 200 zuz, V'amona mono, and a widow, her marriage contract is for 100 zuz. Besula amona grusha v'chalusim ne'erisin. So a Besula, who is a widow or a divorcee or a chalutzi from Erisin, right? Of course, we know what chalitza is, right? Oh my gosh, are we seriously doing this? But for the Yavamas Dodgers, so chalitza, of course, is, are we seriously doing this? Oh my gosh. It's really, just do it. Just do it. Just go for it. Just go for it. Ruvain, Shimon, Sarah, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Okay. Deep breath. Okay. It's just the easiest situation of Yibum. It's the most basic situation of Yibum. Ruvain is married to Sarah. Ruvain dies. They don't have kids. Sarah now needs to marry his brother Shimon. Now, either they can do Yibum, which is marriage, or they can do Chalitza, which is they like take a shoe, spit next to it, spit on the floor, a whole thing. That's Chalitza. So if, wow, whew, that was intense. So if you have a Besula, and she got engaged, and then her husband died, or they got divorced, or they had to do Chalitza, so then, but she's still right. Mina Erisin. It's from the Erisin, not from Nisuin. So Ksubas and Masayim. So we can assume that she is a Besula, and her Ksuba is 200 zuz. Ve'eshlointan is Besulim, and therefore, if the next, they get married, and then the next day, he says, hey, she wasn't a Besula, so he can make a claim that she wasn't a Besula because we can assume that she was a Besula. Right? Meaning we had no reason to assume that she was not a Besula. So therefore, if it turns out that she isn't, he can come and say, hey, what the heck? Or at least, he has to figure out, like maybe she had a relationship from the time that they got engaged and, they're not allowed to be with each other. Okay. Says the Gemara, my Almoneh. What does Almoneh mean? Omer of Chana Bagdata Almoneh al Shem Moneh. That she's called an Almoneh based on the fact that her Ksuba is worth Almoneh. It's worth 100 zuz. Almoneh mina Erisin ma'ika lememar. Yeah, but that doesn't really entirely make sense because an almana from Erisin, we said that her ksuba is not a mana, but 2 manas is 200. So I the ha karile almana hanami karile almana. Well, since an almana from Nisuin is called an almana and she only gets a mana, she only gets 100 zuz. So also an almana from the Erisin, we also call an almana even though she really gets 200 zuz. Almana l'chsiv b'raisa ma'ikal lememar. But yeah, but what about the fact that it says almana in the Torah? And if we're going to say that a ksuba is only midir abanon, so that means that there was, at the time of the Torah, there was no ksuba, so there was no mana. So how come the Torah is calling her an almana if ksubas didn't even exist yet? So the asidim rabbanon the mesakne lemana. Well, in the future, the rabbis were going to create a ksuba where an almana would receive a mana. Because of kol asid. But does the Torah really write stuff based on stuff that's going to happen in the future? Yeah, it does. The Ksubis, the pasuk says, "V'shem anara shlishi chidekel," that the name of the third river in Gan Eden was the Chidekel, hu ha'olech kidmas Ashur, that it traveled east of Ashur. V'tana of Yosef Ashur zo slika, and if Yosef says that Ashur written in the Torah is slika. Umi avoy. Now, did slika exist at the time? El dasida. Rather, it was going to in the future exist. Hachanami de Asida. So here also by the Almana, even though at the time of the giving of the Torah, the concept of a ksuba did not yet exist, but it was going to exist in the future, and the value of the ksuba for a widow was going to be a mana, so therefore they called a widow an almana. From Rav Chana Bagdata, says Rav Chana Bagdata, motor, that rain, mashke marve, it gives to drink, it saturates, umazabel, and it fertilizes, uma'adein, it makes like awesome, umamshich, and it like draws and stuff. Rava says, Rava bar Yishma v'itema Rav Yem bar Shlami Ma'ikra. Where do we have a pasuk to show this? Tilamea Rave, that it's furrows, it saturates, nachis gedudea, and it's, furrows, it saturates. Revivim timukagena, and with like rain, it's like good. Tzimcha dvarich, and it makes like the like stuff that grows blessed. Amar Balazim Mizbeach, Says Rabbi Elazar that the altar maziach umezin, it like, what was the word? I can't even remember. But it I don't know. It like protects and sustains. Mechabev makes beloved. Mechaper, it atones. Hainu mechaper, hainu maziach. No, mechaper and maziach, atoning and like, what was it, like protecting or something, or like the same thing basically. Is there even maziach? Because maziach avonos, I don't know. It like protects you. What do you want me to tell you? I don't know. So maziach gzerus mechaper avonos. So it protects from decrees and it atones sins. Tamre. The Reb Chanan Bagdad said that dates, meshachnon, they make you warm. Mesaban, they make you satiated. Meshalshon, they give you diarrhea. Me'ashron, man, there's like so there's this like, did I tell you guys about this? There's this shake place that I used to go to until the other day. You see, I don't really eat so many different things. I have like a few different things that I eat, mostly soup. I think I mostly eat soup. Anyways, there was this shake place. I figured, all right, I could get a shake sometimes, but now that's kind of out of the cards. But there was this big sign outside the shake place that would say "Shilshul" with a question mark afterwards. It's funny. I guess in Eretz Yisrael, I feel like you wouldn't see that in America, like a shake place that like is like advertising why you should go to their thing and saying like, "Do you have diarrhea?" Like, I don't know, I feel like they wouldn't do it in America. But in Israel, it's like, oh, yeah, do you have shilshul? Come, we'll make you a drink. It's like, alright. I guess in Israel they could do that stuff. Anyways, I stopped going there because I realized they were putting sugar in the shakes. Who the heck wants sugar in a shake? You get a shake because you want, like, to tell yourself that you're getting something healthy. Even though I knew that, like, the quality of the stuff in there was probably not so great anyways, but at least you can, like, tell yourself that it's not so bad. But then there's like sugar in it. It's like, all right, forget it. This is a joke. Let's go weiter. So ma'ashon, and they like make you strong, dates. V'lo mafankon, and they don't make you all finicky. Homer Rav ochel tomorrow ma'yor, says Rav that if you eat dates, do not paskin alocho. Meisvei we have a kasha. Tomorrow shachris v'avis yofos. 1 second, dates in the morning and the evening are very geshmak. B'mincha roos. Now in the afternoon they're bad, but I guess mincha time. But soraim, now in the afternoon, I guess later than that, ein kamosan, they're like really stark, really geshmak. Mavadlo shlosha devarim, and they are mavadlo 3 things. Machshava ra, bad thoughts. V'cholim yayim, intestinal diseases. Yuck. V'tachtonius, hemorrhoids. Mi aminan dilo mailu, alu mailu. No, so meaning, Rav had said that if you eat dates, then you can't paskin halacha, implying that they're like not so good. But we have this, right? We just said that dates are pretty gishmak. So we say, yeah, they are gishmak. Shaita tirda. But nonetheless, after you eat them, you know, you get a shtickle like drunk because like wine. We said that if you drink a revius of wine, you can't paskin halacha. Is wine bad? No, it's not bad. But after you drink wine, you shouldn't be teaching. You shouldn't drive. You know, there are certain things you shouldn't do after you drink wine. Also, there are certain things you shouldn't do after you eat dates. Depends if you're eating it before eating bread or after eating bread. That says Abai that his nurse said to him, Im tamre mikame naimo kinaiga lidikula. That if you have dates before eating bread, it's like chopping down it's like an axe to a date palm. But if you have dates after bread, ki over the dasha, then it's like a bolt in a door. Dasha amarava derech sham. Dasha says, what is the word? Rava says, what does the word dasha mean? It means like through there, right? It's a door, so it means like through there. Darga amarava derech gag. A darga, a step, is like, that means like that's the way to the roof. Puria, and a bed, amapapa shapar and v'ravanaleh. That's where you have pruvu. That's where you become fruitful and multiply. Omer of Nachman bar Yitzchak, Af Anu Nomar, says Nachman bar Yitzchak will also say, Ilonis duchonis de lo yalda. That Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says that an Ilonis, like an ayil, like a ram, an Ilonis is of course a kastradala, also an inside joke from Yevamis, but it's a girl who is unable to conceive children. And she's called an Ilonis because it's like an in Ayo, like a ram, that rams are male and do not give birth. Friends, that was our field of Masechet Ksubis. The beginning of the daf, we continued with the sugya of Pesach Pasuach. We saw the opinion of Shmuel, who says that if a fellow says Pesach Pasuach Matzasi, so he's believed so that she will not get her Ksubit. We then saw a mechlokas about, do we say that Ksubit is the Rabbanon or the Oraisa? We saw Reb Shimon Gamliel says that Taka Ksubit is Mida Oraisa. We saw a whole bunch of anecdotes about Pesach Pasuach. And then we got to a Mishnah where we say that the ksubah of an almana is 100 zuz and the ksubah of a psula is 200 zuz. Friends, that was the afyud of Masechet Ksubis. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.